reconvene the meeting of the St. Mary's County Board of Education for Wednesday, January 15th, 2020. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item, may I have approval of the agenda?
I move approval of the agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. We'll begin with board reports. Begin.
All right, so earlier this week on Monday, I met with our SLAC steering committee group along with Dr. Smith and Dr. Marr to begin our plans for the upcoming middle school SLAC meeting on January 23rd and for our high school SLAC meeting, which will be held on February 4th. So we've been coming up with a lot of great ideas to make these events a success, and I'm really excited to see what we come up with. And then something else that I'm really looking forward to is that this coming Saturday, if weather permits, Maryland Association of Student Councils is putting the spotlight on Southern Maryland, and they're hosting a Southern Leadership Conference where delegates from Prince George's County, Charles County, Calvert County, and St. Mary's can all get together and be able to network and discuss different concerns that they have in their regions.
So last week, Miss Bailey and I went up to Annapolis to up to the MABE office to have a meeting and discuss about the Federal Relations Network board that we're both on. And so in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we're going to be going up to DC, to Capitol Hill, to talk to our legislators about important things that are going on in education and across Maryland, and specifically here in St. Mary's County. So some of the focus that the state is looking at is recruiting and retaining and securing great teachers, the idea about the funding for special education, and safe and healthy school climate. So, like I said, we had a meeting there. We're going to be attending a conference, some meetings there before going to see our legislators. So I look forward to doing that. I think it'll be exciting and well worth the opportunity for them to hear our point of view, especially here in Southern Maryland.
Okay, so Rita took most of my report.
Sorry.
I'm going to glom on Kathy's because we did go up on Wednesday of last week for the opening day of the legislative session, and we sat in the Senate chamber. So we were there with the installation of our new Senate president after almost 3 decades, I believe.
33 years.
Yes, so that was very interesting. And then I'm going to put on my parent hat. I'm going to have to give a boost to Chopticon, to the athletic boosters. They held a quarter auction at the Moose Lodge last Sunday, raised a little over $10,000 that is all going back to all of the athletic teams. And it was incredible. I mean, literally the room was packed. We had to cut off people coming in so everyone could take a seat and we could figure out how many chairs we had left. That's how many people we had, not only from the high school but also from the community. So there were a lot of donations from businesses throughout the county. Each of the sports teams put up raffle baskets to raffle off in addition to the quarter auction, 50-50, and it was just, I mean, it seemed like everyone was there. Coaches, student athletes, parents, administrators. It was literally a packed house. It was the first time they did it. They were worried no one was going to show up. The joke was on them, but great job to everyone there. So, and that school community. So,
That's wonderful. Last night, I attended the All-County High School Honor Band Concert, which was held at Chopticon High School. We had an outstanding guest conductor, Mr. Molluscus from Towson University. He has lifetime experience in marching band and music instruction, and he comes from a music family where his father was the band director at Lehman High School for 36 years. So Mr. Molluscus is highly acclaimed. And many of Mr. Molluscus' alum are from St. Mary's County. Mr. Pearson, the band director at Great Mills High School, was one of his students and in the marching band at Towson. And Mr. Burrows, did you attend Towson?
No, I didn't.
Okay. All right, but he knows great band conductors at Towson University, which is good for St. Mary's County. I thoroughly enjoyed the audience participation where we whistled, sang, and we gave the sign. As, you know, that you want to do that on the road.
Toot your
when one-
horn.
Yes, toot your horn when the truck goes by. And having a guest conductor from a university like Towson provides our students with an opportunity to work with a college-level band instructor, and it exposes them to college-level music experiences, and it strengthens our partnership with SMCPS and Towson University. In addition to that, it gives our students direct access with the band director of a university that they may wish to attend. Mr. Molluska said, quote, "Students study music to prepare to be brain surgeons. Surgery takes time, patience, and teamwork," unquote. He told the audience that our SMCPS band directors are sincerely interested in our children, and it felt good to hear him say this about SMCPS, quote, "Be proud, and you are fortunate," unquote. So thanks to the high school band directors, Matt Ordell at Chopticon High School, Matt Pearson, Great Mills, Hunter Morgan at Leonardtown High School, and Mr. Burrows, Supervisor of Instruction for Fine Arts. And thanks to everyone who attended. Even though it was a very foggy night, it was worth it to go to the performance. It was a wonderful experience. Mrs. Allen, Superintendent Smith, and I were there, and we just had a great time. Thank you.
I think one of the things that struck me most about something he said was that in his marching band at Towson, and he's been doing this now there for 16 years, that not everyone in the marching band is a music major. That there are a lot of students there who have participated in marching band in their high schools and want to continue that. And he said, without exception, the students coming from St. Mary's County schools are exceptional. Wonderful students, wonderful musicians, and I think it really speaks volumes about not only the music program that we have here, but the fine arts that we continue to believe in and continue to offer for our students. There are a lot of school systems across the state and the nation who have opted to remove fine arts from their school systems for budgetary reasons. And I'm grateful that this board has never even entertained the idea of doing something like that. To just quickly piggyback on to the opening day of the General Assembly, I do serve on MABE's legislative committee on behalf of this board, and there are a number of bills that are going to be coming forward this year. One in particular I'm concerned about. MABE had not followed for the last 3 years that it has been presented, and this will be the fourth from Senator Cheryl Kagan, who has a consumer protection bill that would prevent us from scanning IDs for people coming into our schools. So we will be working to either get a waiver for that or hope that that bill does not pass, because as written it is, it would not contribute to the safety of our schools in any way, shape, or form. So.
Absolutely, and that the intent is for consumer protection when things are in a retail environment, when somebody's scanning, and we want to make sure that that's delineated from a public school where it's exceptionally important that we know the absolute identity of anybody who is entering our building.
Law enforcement has that
Law
waiver, I
enforcement.
believe, in the bill.
Yeah.
We should as well.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. So, was up at PZAM where we're talking about legislation. Afterwards, went with to a joint meeting with the MABE Executive Board and the PZAM Executive Board. We're talking about legislation. Went to Chopticon several times for a data meeting and for the band thing. And so Chopticon, I've been doing a lot of visiting in the northern part. I got to get down to the southern part. Before break, Great Mills High School for the holiday, The Grinch Stole Christmas, and some of the things that they were doing. Esperanza Middle School, they had a breakout activity right before. We haven't met since 2019. A whole bunch of stuff.
Prior decade.
We're in a brand new decade. Before the all county, the St. Mary's County all county high school honor band, I had the great opportunity to go to the Tri-County Honors Orchestra concert this year. So they each year we focus on, one year it's band, one year it's chorus, this year it's orchestra, where the best of the best from all three counties all come together under fantastic conductors who come down to the county. And it's orchestra in particular. There's been, so funding of fine arts has always been, it's the first thing to go. It's the first thing under attack. And usually strings are one of the very first things that people kind of focus on. They try to fold it into things. This was a strings concert. It was beautiful. When you see that many cellos all playing together, it was just a beautiful, wonderful experience. And I got to spend even more time with Todd Burrows and his lovely wife and his two daughters as we sat in the front row and just enjoyed a magnificent concert. So that was really wonderful. There's going to be a lot of legislation that comes forward this year. It's going to take a lot of our attention away from some of the things that are going on locally, because we need to be active, we need to be vocal, we need to be participating in all of this. We're talking about things that will impact education in the state of Maryland. And at the core of it, it's a question of whether or not we're putting enough money into the most important work that we do as a state, that we do as a nation. Public education needs to be properly funded, and that's going to be the conversation that goes on, and I know that our voice will be part of that. So I look forward to it. Off to a great start. 2020, I just simply can't wait. So let's start.
Okay. Do we have any public comment? We do not. Okay. Then may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
My second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. First most exciting item is roof maintenance and repairs. Get it all done before the snow.
Just never gonna stop.
Luckily, I think our first
Maybe
one
not
may
this
be on a
month.
Saturday.
Next month, we'll talk.
It's the first item, I apologize.
It's all right. It's the roof maintenance and
The roof-
repairs.
Yes.
roofing one.
Start with the roof, end with asphalt.
Good morning.
Good one.
So this morning, I'm here to ask your approval to ride a existing contract for roof maintenance repair at various schools in our school system. To request approval to utilize St. Mary's County's government contract with St. Mary's County Roofing and Home Improvement LLC to purchase roofing services and materials in an aggregate amount that exceeds $50,000 annually, as needed and as funding permits throughout the duration of the contract. The Department of Maintenance, we manage approximately 1.8 million square foot of roofing. Every 6 months, the roofs are inspected for minor repairs and maintenance, and minor maintenance is accomplished as required to maintain dry educational spaces and roof warranties where they're applicable. Annually, the Department of Maintenance spends $55,000 to about $72,000 on roofing maintenance and minor repairs, about 3.5 cents a square foot. Currently, we are recommending the following roofing projects for this coming fiscal year, which is Dinard Elementary. These are all maintenance projects, by the way. These aren't replacements. These are refilling caulking joints and flashing. So this would be Dinard Elementary School, DSS, Esperanza Middle School, Fairlead Academy 1, Letty Marshall Dent, and Oakville Elementary School. Procurement method is Board Policy DJC and Regulation DJCR encourages that the use and establishment of other agencies providing building public bidding procedures were followed. Cooperative purchasing, piggybacking is another word, is permitted by Maryland state law and as stated in Annotated Code of Maryland, Article 5-112, and State Financial Procurement Articles 13-110. And with that, we're asking for the board's approval on this agenda item as presented.
I have no questions, thank you.
I have a question. When I'm looking at the roofing services, it'll say like additional journeyman roofer, like so much per hour or whatever. But they're not subcontracting out, are they? This is I'm trying to look at the contractor.
It's on the bid,
I'm on the bid.
or the
So-
contractor, excuse me.
Right, so the St. Mary's Roofing and Home Improvement, they're not, when it says additional, was it additional?
It's about the
third
third page down.
Yeah. Additional journeyman roofer, they're not subcontracting out. This is their workers, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I'm not aware of any subcontractor.
So in other words, it would take
Contract.
more than one person to do this
So
job.
it's structured as it's structured as an hourly a T&M contract, time and material contract. So
Right.
the price rates you see are for them providing a roofer with a truck, transportation, and then a roofer without, and then a helper, and so forth.
Right,
And then there should be a material
So,
markup
so
also.
this, if they roll one truck, it's gonna be $79 an
Oh,
hour. If
okay.
they have to put a second or third person in the truck, then it's gonna be an additional $68 an hour. Because the truck and all of the overhead associated with the truck is loaded into the $79 an hour. This is
Okay.
just what the straight labor rate's gonna be.
Okay, because I was like, oh, are we
No,
getting additional
no.
people in here?
And then and I'm assuming that a journeyman and a laborer are
Right.
different classes, so then if they're just gonna put a laborer in, then it's 42 an hour. So this is what we're gonna pay. We're gonna pay 79 regardless as soon as the truck hits
Okay.
us. And then these two, if they need additional staff, that would
Okay.
be the rates.
Okay, that makes sense then.
So they provide us a proposal based on how long and how many hours and the type of people they predict to use. And then as the work is being executed, we monitor the actual hours used, and then we negotiate at the end on how much actually gets invoiced.
Okay,
So
all right,
it is,
thank you.
and then when we do get the invoice, it's we talked about the time portion, the material portion of the contract. We actually get the invoice from the contractor before they expended their funds, and we reimburse plus the markup.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I don't have any questions, thank you.
No questions, thank you.
No questions.
All right. Thought I lost it. All right, may I have a motion then for this recommended action item?
I move that the Board of Education approve the use of St. Mary's County Government Contract 19 BS 101928 with St. Mary's Roofing and Home Improvement to provide services on an as-needed basis and as funding permits throughout the duration of the contract, which has the potential to be valid through June 2022.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. We will go on to asphalt paving.
Asphalt paving and contracting services. The Department of Maintenance maintains approximately 81 acres of parking lots alone. The contract being presented will also assist with some small amendments to the existing parking lots. The contract will be used to provide asphalt paving and concrete services on an as-needed basis at multiple SMCPS school and office sites. The contract is a unit price contract covering overlays, repairs, new pavement installation and parking lot line striping or painting, etc. The expenditures are estimated to exceed $300K annually. The procurement method used was an invitation to bid. In the past, we have written other contracts. This year, we decided to take some time out and structure one just for us. Following board policy DJC, ITB SMCPS 2020M APC bid was posted on E-Maryland Marketplace and on St. Mary's County Purchasing Department Board on November 5th, 2019. Bids were open on November 26th, 2019. 76 registered vendors were notified of the opportunity on E-Maryland Marketplace, and 4 bids were received. Complete bid tabulation were provided. 8+ Paving and Concrete Incorporated of Waldorf, Maryland provided the lowest responsive bid or price, and we're recommending approval.
I have no questions, thank you.
No questions, Lois, thank you.
I don't have anything, thank you.
No questions.
How confident are you that the company's going to be able to do this for the price they've quoted, given the disparity in the bid
They were actually the winner of the Charles County contract that we've used for the past several years, and they've done an acceptable job for roughly the same price. The bid prices for the contract that expired were naturally a little lower, but this is in line with what we saw the previous 4 years.
Okay. Thanks, that's all I had.
May I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve award ITB SMCPS 2020 M APC for asphalt paving and concrete services to A+ Paving and Concrete Incorporated of Waldorf.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is the school calendar recommendations for the next 2 calendar years, which would be 2021 and 2022.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I am very glad to be presenting the recommendations of the calendar committee to you. I know our phone has been ringing off the hook for quite some time asking what our calendar will look like, and so this is our first draft to present to you. The calendar is developed as a result of a very collaborative process that involves input from our parents and our guardians, our students, members of education associations, teachers, support staff, principals, central office staff. And their job is to take a look at all the input and the considerations for developing the calendar and then present that model to you, which is what I will be doing. The committee members, I've added this slide in here from what was originally shared with you, just to share with you the representative group that serves on the calendar committee. And the calendar committee meets 3 times during the fall. They help to develop the questions that went out on the survey. They reviewed the data from the survey. You can see that we have some parent representatives, some student representatives, and actually the students, one of them is a SLAC student, and one of them actually reached out to me last year and said, I've had a lot of students who have come to me and asked for our voice to be representative, and so she volunteered to be part of this committee, and so we're very grateful for their participation. You see the both the associations were representative, as well as additional teachers, including our previous teacher of the year, Ms. Lorick, and Mr. Matera, who also reached out and said, I'd like to be part of this conversation. We have several school administrators, and then we have also representatives from the various departments that look at all of the other facets of the school system and our operations to make sure that we have taken into account all of not just the what is required in developing the calendar, but also other considerations, for example, transportation. Okay. So we developed a survey. We put it out to the community in November. We also had a Google site that shared information throughout the process with the community. The calendar committee met on the 3 dates here, November 4th, November 28th, and December 2nd, and then they provided a draft recommendation of the calendar for your consideration. As the calendar committee worked through the process, they looked through all of the survey responses, not just the quantitative survey, but also a lot of the, there were several pages of open-ended responses that we shared with the committee as well. We looked at the parameters, which I should be sharing with you in just a moment, and then developed considerations for a 2-year calendar so that we're not, now that we have some stability in the process, we can look at what are some long-term plans, and that will also help our families to determine what their family plans are as they move forward. Looking at not just the start date and end dates, looking at holidays and breaks, professional development opportunities, early dismissals for collaborative planning and professional responsibilities, and inclement weather possibilities. We also looked at other legislation and MSDE guidance, which again, this past year provided a little bit more flexibility for us. In developing the calendar, the key number is 180. That would be 190 also for our 10-month staff, and then additional staff days for our 11 and 12-month have to be counted in there as well. We have required student hours too, so that we have to monitor how many early dismissals that are provided so that we stay within the hour count for our elementary students as well as our high school students. In addition, Maryland law requires that school systems are closed. Schools are closed for students on these days, Thanksgiving and the day after, Christmas Eve through January 1st, Dr. Martin Luther King Day, President's Day, the Friday before Easter through the Monday after Easter, Memorial Day, and primary and general election days. And as you know, this fall we have a general election day to consider. In addition, we have to make sure that if we are to request a waiver in the future for a reduction of the 180 days, we have to have had those inclement weather days built in, including 3 at the end of the school year. Well, let's take a look at what our survey said. We had almost 3,000 responses from our community, which I think is our record number. We bested our last survey by about 30 responses. In looking at the population of the respondents, there are more than half of them were parents, about 20% were staff, and another 16% were both staff and parents. There were 4.4% community members, 3.4% students, and about 1% of others, which might be other community members or other interested parties who might have responded. We asked specifically about certain days that were not required by state law, but we have traditionally had off. And so, for example, Veterans Day was very much in favor of remaining a day off, as well as the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. We have so many families that did not necessarily reside here prior to living here now and have families elsewhere, so they want that day as a travel day. As well as a full week of spring break. So you can see these 3 days were really important to the community that we locked in and then worked around the calendar. With the flexibility of allowing for a pre-Labor Day start, we wanted to ask the community what that meant for them. And so we asked for feedback on 3 specific dates. One is September 8th, if we remained as the day after Labor Day. 2 was if we backed it up a week to September 1st. And 3, if we went the fourth Wednesday in August, which had been a model that worked for us before. You can see that about 64% were opposed to the Labor Day start because of really looking at the end date that would be a potential, which I'll be sharing with you what this looks like if we shifted it to either of those other options. However, there was greater support, a plurality for the August 26th date. So the calendar committee, when developing its models, looked at this feedback to begin the process. So from that, they used the August 26th as a start date. So let me roll through what the proposed calendars would look like on a month-by-month basis. So again, looking at the 2 years, and so you see the left column there is the 2020-2021 calendar year, and then the purple shaded column to the right of it would be the date specific for the following year. So that you're going to see a parallel go through it, but just so that you look through it. And what I'll really highlight is just the key time. So of course, Independence Day, the Chesapeake Public Charter School, which is part of the calendar committee as well, used what the committee developed to then take back to their board to develop its calendar. And so you see that far right column would be the charter school's calendar. They report a little earlier, so their 11-month employees would report prior to ours. And then if we go into August, the entire school system set of 11-month employees would report in August 2nd on that following year. I'm reporting on July 30th of this coming year. New teacher orientation for the public charter school is that first week in August, following with its professional days, with the charter school opening for students on the 12th coming this school year, the 11th the following year. And then the greater public schools, if you look at the new teacher orientation, it happens a few weeks later, the mid-weeks of August, looking at, if again, the professional days that would follow, and then opening for school for students on the 26th of August and the 25th the following year. Again, both being the 4th Wednesday of August. When we look at September, then Labor Day falls on the 7th of September this coming year, the 6th the following, and you have that is a day off for both. The Chesapeake Public Charter School has that previous Friday as an early dismissal for collaborative planning. The public schools then has a 2-hour early dismissal for professional responsibilities on the 24th of September, the end of the interim period, and a professional day, which is the county fair day, which is also a professional day for the Chesapeake Public Charter School. Moving into October, If you look at the charter schools calendar, they have a 2 early dismissal for collaborative planning, and then their October recess that follows. October 12th, this coming year, the 11th the following year would be the Columbus Day that we have used as a parent conference day, and that would be the same for the charter school. The 16th then would be a professional responsibilities and collaborative planning day. That is also the association conference day. And the 30th, which would be the end of the marking period, would also allow for a 2-hour early dismissal with professional responsibilities. Looking at November 3rd this coming year would be a general election day, so all schools would be closed for students and 10 and 11-month employees. It would be a day of work for our 12-month staff. That is to make the calendar of the contracted days work. If you look at the charter school then, that following week, they have a 2 early dismissal for collaborative planning. The holiday of Veterans Day on November 11th for all schools. Thanksgiving break then following at that time, including that Wednesday prior to Thanksgiving. In December, it's a 2-hour early dismissal at the end of interim period, and then collaborative planning again for the charter school following. And then we have a holiday break that looks to be a little longer this coming year because of where Christmas falls, because it's on a Friday. Then New Year, Christmas Eve is then a Thursday. The question was, do we attend those 3 days prior? In the past, it has been successful to have that week to allow for family travels. That schools would then reopen on the 4th of January or the 3rd the following year, with then the following week 2-hour early dismissal for the public charter school, end of quarter 2-hour early dismissal for professional responsibilities for the charter school following. The holiday of Dr. King's Day on that Monday, the 18th or the 17th respectively, and then the end of the marking period following that. This calendar also includes a professional day mid-year, which was very important for, as we look at mid-year professional development for our staff. That was a day that we had previously had that had been lost in compressed calendars. It was important to bring that back. Moving forward into February, that professional day shifts a couple days later due to the calendar in the following year, but the holiday coming for President's Day, which is also used as a possible inclement weather day. We've had to use that in the past. This year it doesn't look like we're near that. As we look at the end of the interim period, you see another 2-hour early dismissal day. And again, the public charter school has different 2-hour early dismissals, but they're throughout their calendar, as well as a recess time at that's around that same weekend of President's Day. When we look at March, again, we have early dismissals for collaborative planning for staff of the charter school, and early dismissal for professional responsibilities for all public schools, including the public charter school, at the end of March and prior to spring break. Spring break for St. Mary's for 2021 falls at the end of March. In 2022, it goes a couple of weeks later it's a late one in mid-April. And so those holidays, as required, are detailed here as well. We have another early dismissal for professional responsibilities at the mid-April time, and for both the charter school and the public schools. The end of interim period falls in May. That is also the time where AP testing is, so the shift of the 2-hour early dismissal for professional responsibilities and collaborative planning shifts a week later to allow for that testing period to be done. Then we have the holiday of Memorial Day, and as we roll into the commencement time following Memorial Day, you'll see those dates outlined as the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of June, respectively. And then the key things to look at here are when the final days of school are. So the final day for the public charter school falls on the 11th and the 9th, respectively. The last day for students of the greater public schools falls on the 16th and 14th, respectively, with 2 days of professional days for staff that follow, with the last day for 11-month employees pushing the very last day of June. And so again, these calendars do include 3 inclement weather days. If we do not use those 3 inclement weather days, it backs the school year up 3 days to the 11th or the 9th respectively. And if we use more snow days, which there have been some days where we've had to tack on a couple of days, that would then push it beyond the calendar dates that would be listed here as well. Unless in the years where we've had a really great number where we can't extend the calendar, we've obviously asked for a waiver and received that. Now, with that said, this was the proposed calendar based on the input of the community and the calendar committee's discussions. If we look at the what-if scenario, we've added this slide in here as well, so you'll see it on the screen in front of you, that if we looked at those other calendars, what would happen? If we looked at a September 1st calendar, essentially we would have to figure out 4 days more to add into the calendar. Those could either be added at the end of the year, having the last day of June 22nd, or extending the school year by a couple of days and shaving off a couple of other days that are off throughout the calendar. As I shared with you, those could be either looking at a shortened spring break, so coming that Monday, Tuesday, or something of that existing spring break, or eliminating professional days. Some combination would have to meet those 4 days, either at the end of the year or somewhere else. If we had a September 8th post-Labor Day start, we'd have to figure out 8 more days, and that would make it really tight. Either adding 8 days to the end of the year would end the school year on June 28th, or some combination of other additions throughout the calendar. So with that said, our next steps, we have a public hearing scheduled on January 29th to allow these draft calendars to be reviewed and have the public share their thoughts at that time. And then we have board action scheduled for February 22nd. With that, I know I talked very fast, so ask if you have any questions or comments.
I have one question. So I know students really love to have those off days to have an extra day to do their homework or just to have a little break from school or even have a longer break for the holidays to travel. So how many more off days are in the August 26th calendar compared to the calendar of this school year, the 2019 to 2020?
So with the exception of those other winter days, there is that January professional day that has added into the calendar.
So is that the only difference between like the number of off days between the calendar that we have right now between?
I will
and
have to
then-
go back and double check, but that's the one that comes to mind that is specifically different.
Well, and the winter break that's proposed in both of these calendars is a full 2 weeks.
Right.
Where it was abbreviated this year the way things fell out.
Thank you.
Okay, I will tell you, I am against starting that early. I think there has to be a happy medium in there. Yeah, I know that starting it after Labor Day is pushing it for, a lot of things to get accomplished. But some of the complaints that I hear, since we're living in a military community, is there's some people that are coming from other states or other countries. They are not aware that we are starting before Labor Day. And if they are, then a lot of them will have to, for the way the orders work, they have to then travel without their spouse and try to find accommodations to try to be here on time to register their student. If not, their student's already missed 2 weeks. Number two, the other thing I hear from parents with smaller children is all the divided days in between, like say if you have a day off here, a day off there. They said it's very hard to get daycare just like as a drop-in one day here or one day there. They would much rather have it all compacted together and get daycare, be assured of daycare, paying for it, whether it's over the summertime or over the holiday break, instead of having so many, divided days in there. It's stretched out. Now, if we can go to the one slide you have there, that is, it's page 10 or slide 10. Do you support or oppose the following start dates? If you look at it, and this is what I don't understand, for people that are pretty much are neutral or don't really care when they start, it should be pretty much consistent all the way, I would think, all the way down, and it's not. But if you take those, that neutral and put it to the support, if you want to take those people that really don't care and you want to bring it over to the support, The people starting August 26th, it would be 62.3% are in support of it. And if you go to the September 1st, it would be 63. Okay, so it's pretty much a wash.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing too that I looked at is the Parent-Teacher Day on October 12th for the 2020 school year and the 11th on 2021 school year. Parents are now on hack. You get that feedback, pretty much immediately, or should be getting it immediately. Parents should be keeping up to date with it. And if there is a problem with their student, with their grades, or, anything like that, parents should be, talking with the teacher then, not waiting for that one day to come in. I don't know what the response rate is for parents really coming in and sitting with the teachers on that day, or are they just coming in and just, hey, just want, hi, and, not sitting down and going over everything. But really, parents should be looking at that hack and doing more of an immediate instead of waiting till that one day. Because I think that's really the beauty of the system we have now. Then the other thing is, and I understand people traveling. I get that. But if you look at in the the 2021, that is a long break. Not everybody travels. There is a small percentage of people that travel. I get that. But I'm going to tell you, most of the population does not travel. So you have it, and I understand it's on Thursday, it's Christmas Eve. So if you took that Monday and Tuesday and came to school on the 21-22 school year, you have Christmas Eve isn't until Friday. Christmas is on Saturday. It's great to have that whole week off beforehand, but remember, parents that are working with little kids have to take that whole week off too. Because once again, it's hard to get daycare. You're not going to get daycare for those days right before Christmas when you don't normally have, a daycare set up. So this is my thought on it, is what is wrong with, instead of starting on September 1st, you take those days and you go to the 31st, August 31st, and because that would be,
You're looking for 3.
I'm looking for 3. So if you took away that parent-teacher conference, because I really don't know how many parents show up for that. I'm going to say that probably most don't. Take that away and take away like 2 of the days for the, before Christmas, and get it to the 31st and have more of a, I think most of the community could live with maybe starting a little bit before Labor Day, but I really think that 2 weeks before is really, it's might as well, why don't we just start in the middle of summer? We just keep creeping it back, and I know that you're adding stuff onto the end of the calendar. That was like your scenario, but why don't we try to take a little bit off the, front too?
Mrs. Weaver, Dr. Marr, is there any way you can actually pull up the attached PDF of the calendars that are there?
Yes.
It might be easier to
The
take
one on
for
ours
the
are both
visual.
the same. They both have
Yeah.
the August, my board docs,
Yeah,
they
it
both show
says-
the August 26th start date.
Yeah. So
Okay,
do
well,
I.
either one, and that
Yeah.
would, you can pull it, just so that you can kind of see what we're,
It says
What
draft
we're-
1, draft 2, but I do not have one that maps out a September 1st start date.
no,
Oh, no, we didn't mock out, no, that's.
we didn't model that.
Right.
So, but this would at least give kind of a visual representation of the days that you're,
I just pulled up a
days
calendar,
that you're talking
like a regular
about.
calendar.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. But it might be easier for people playing along at home. I will say this, before we go through all the comments, for the history of St. Mary's County Public Schools, for all of its existence, before the governor made an executive order that we start before post-Labor Day, we started on the 4th Wednesday of August, and in fact, sometimes on the 3rd Wednesday in August. So for the entire history of St. Mary's County Public Schools, the 4th Wednesday was the start. We started midweek so that we would have so we could have everybody in the buildings on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then we had a 3-day week to get the kids in, to have them acclimate, to make sure that they were all where they needed to be. Then we had a break, and then we came back for a full week before we had Labor Day. That is the educational way that we did things. It also gave us the greatest number of days before we have state mandated assessments and assessment windows and all the things that have to happen. That's where that all was. Now, I understand that there's been a great push to keep summer and all of that, but if you talk to educators, this is why we did historically what we've always done. And I can get the people coming in from military, and maybe I can work with Mrs. Simpson to kind of get the exact numbers for how many people receive military orders and actually arrive before September, that they suddenly get orders and they have to drop in, like what that actual number is out of our 18,000 students, because I hear that quite often, but I haven't ever looked into that exact number. Is it 5 families? Is it 50 families? Is it 100 families? Like, how many people, because that's the other part, is we kind of work back to see what exactly that is.
Well, I know that's the time of orders, because like when we used to, I was on the rotation to receive orders to be there January 1st. So that was always, my rotation was in January. So it's either, over the summer or it's over Christmas.
Right,
Those are the two big
military
times.
neighbor who is being transferred to Jacksonville. So he and his family will leave in June to head to Jacksonville.
I thought it was usually June, July. They don't try to wait till September to drop you in. But I'd like to.
Depends on the specialty.
Depends on what it is.
And you have to also look at where the states from which they're coming. Because we moved here from Virginia, and Virginia always had a post-Labor Day start because of King's Dominion. And I
Great
get
driver.
I get here.
Because if you want to talk
so
education,
stop.
an amusement park is the driver.
Where I was going with it
Or
is
Ocean City.
the 3 days, starting with just 3 days, especially for our elementary students, our younger students, there are fewer meltdowns, a lot calmer. I get what you're saying.
But
one
if
of the
you
things I'd
start on September 1st, you're starting with 4 days.
right,
So,
yeah,
I mean, honestly, I have to completely agree with Rita. The military thing, I don't know about, because I did not grow up in a military family. But I think the mental thought process of starting school in August versus starting school in September hits home with a lot of people. And we can start on August 31st, we can start on September 1st, because we're only looking for 3 days. I completely 100% agree with the Columbus Day. I mean, my children have gone through elementary school, talking to elementary school teachers now, there are entire classes that do not have a parent that shows up for parent-teacher conference day. So, if we've made it work with a 2-hour early dismissal for the past several years. I understand the instructor's thought process at not having it, but if, and I think at some point, someone surveyed how many, elementary school
Right.
conferences
We actually,
had.
last year, when we implemented the Columbus Day
Right.
holiday
And it
again,
was
we
extremely
did go
low.
back, and we actually had, really, the elementary schools particularly had a high number of participants and very full schedules. So it was something that was absolutely reflected in that. I can share that data
Right.
with you if you'd
But
like.
a 2-hour
That would be
early
helpful.
dismissal still gets everyone out at 2:00 in an elementary school. The majority of our parents work, so I don't, they weren't coming in and you didn't always have teachers that were willing to come in at 7:30 in the morning either. They started their conferences at the start of their working day in order to meet with those parents. So, and then, to Mrs. Weaver's point, I'm at a toss-up as to whether to pull the other 2 days out of the professional development days or on Christmas break. That's just gonna have to, be worked out. But to me, the August 26th start date and going back to the way it was, which I understand the educator thing and all that, but now I have a 10-day break in the middle of a marking period for winter break. So, and and with the survey results that were, to me, they do seem skewed. I don't understand why everyone has an opinion on the August 26th date, and, they have an opinion on the September 8th date, but September 1st date, they're all of a sudden neutral. So that, that to me doesn't logically track in my brain. I'm sure Dr. Jaffers can offer some insights on that, but, so, I mean, those are just my thoughts. I mean,
I appreciate this input. This will, you're giving very specific questions and guidance, which is helpful.
I would like to see you come back with the data, the number of military families who are impacted by this calendar. But from my experience, most of the moves are done in June and July, so that families will be situated and have housing by the time school opens. I would also like to see the data on the number of parents who show up for Parent Conference Day. And do we need to make a shift here? I mean, we've always done it that way, where we have Parent Conference Day, but is it time to review that and do something different? I appreciate the number of people who participated, the number of responses that you received back, which was the largest ever. You had a huge committee, and I don't want to discount all the work that went into the proposals that you submitted, because I've been on the calendar committee years ago, and it is very difficult to balance everything and to satisfy everyone. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you come back with, see what the committee says, but
I don't want to interrupt you, but there's one other item that I just noticed when you were paging through that is not on here. What was the percentage of individuals who responded on the fair day? Because last year that had dropped off, and that's not in this presentation at all.
I will get that for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Because, I mean, Veterans Day,
Right.
Did we ask Fair Day this year?
I have to go back and look. I
Right.
know that these specific ones were ones that we had gone back and forth. That data may have been omitted because of the fact that it never was a question whether or not we would have off Fair Day because of the issues with where the fair is, how it would impact the Leonardtown campus
Right,
particularly, et cetera. So, but I can,
and the number of students who participate in the fair.
correct.
We have a
Right.
lot of students in the county who participate, and the fair
Right,
is
but
a St. Mary's County institution where people come from all over the state of Maryland to
Right.
see it, and because a lot of students who live in cities never experience this beautiful thing we have in St. Mary's County as
And it may
the
have been
county
in
fair.
the list. can't tell you the
I mean,
specific numbers.
I
but-
know it wasn't the prior surveys, but when she was scrolling through and she hit that slide, I noticed it wasn't on there. I'm not implying we take away Fair Day in any way, shape, or form. I just was curious as to whether or not
If
that
I
was part of the survey.
recall correctly, the data was kind of across the board. It was a lot of like, I need it off, I want it off, I don't, and it was a kind of a flat line of survey data. I'm just kind of going back to it, but because of the fact that it wasn't something that the calendar committee could do something with. It was, these
Right.
were
No,
very
I
much like,
completely
we have
understand.
choices here to make, and we're making a choice based on the
Well,
feedback.
considering that all the overflow parking is at Leonardtown Middle High School and the tech center,
Right.
it's impossible. But I was just curious as to what the
yeah.
community said, because I
Okay.
think we were surprised one year when people said they didn't really care.
Right.
So,
Well,
I
depends
know.
on the age.
That'd be like trying to take away Veterans Day, which we would never do in this county. That just
we did-
wouldn't
we-
happen. We would
we-
have a huge
we did
outcry.
last year.
What?
We didn't take off.
It was on a weekend
itself
last
was
year,
on
so
Right.
we did not have the
not-
federal
did not
holiday
follow the
off.
federal
Correct.
government,
We
right.
had,
Right.
Let me see. You did break my concentration, but anyway, I think I had.
You were thanking everyone for all of their hard work
That
on the
doesn't
calendar
mean I was at the
committee.
end. I might have come up with another idea.
Can I jump in and you?
Wait, hold on.
Well,
Wait a minute, wait, but I did hear from parents that they loved the 2 months off. They loved that, because they were off all of July and all of August. But, they said they loved that, so I'm waiting to see the feedback that you, get back. And it might be the same, that they still want what's here. And professional development days are very important. They are key. So when we have Fair Day, it serves a double thing. Professional day for teachers and students are able to continue their education by going to the fair. It's an educational thing. We have a building of artwork, our students' crafts, speeches. We're all over the county fair. So I'll see what you come up with and the data the superintendent brings.
I would like to see the numbers for the Columbus Day conferences so that we can make an informed decision about that particular day, whether it's all off, part off, or what. I'm curious, on the recommendations to bring these two calendars forward, were the votes of the committee unanimous?
We did a consensus-driven process where we would go through specific decisions, ask for consensus, which we were not necessarily doing a poll vote, but is there anybody who can't live with this versus, can you support it process. And there was consensus moving forward with this calendar. Now, there was discussion throughout about different models, but when it came down to the final, okay, let's decide on the start date, there was a consensus-driven decision-making process there. Having said that, you've given a lot of other information which we can also take back to them.
Right.
I'm curious what the parents and the students who participated in the committee, especially for them, what their feelings were about the three options of start dates.
So for the parents, many of the discussions around the start date we had a really, really long summer. And so I think there were comments at the committee about how it really was a little bit too long. And so having that time, plus the discussion about having a little bit of time before Labor Day to allow for an adjustment period coming back was, and I don't remember specific people who said what, but that was part of the discussion of the committee, including the parents and students. And as I said before, the students who were on the committee really talked about how when we have a very compressed calendar and we may go 4, 5, 6 weeks without an early dismissal or without a day where they can catch up on homework, that was really important. So when we looked at, for example, putting that January professional day in there, that was really driven by that fact of, first of all, teachers need a time to come together and share strategies, but also the students need a day where they have a lot of things going on and they need a day to catch up on work and catch their breath. And Nagina, I saw you're nodding your head. I don't know if you have any other.
I completely agree, especially because that's third quarter is starting, and third quarter it feels like the longest quarter because you have no breaks and then you have spring break at the end of it. But I have also one thing to add to Dr. Smith's point about testing, because I know it can be really hard to take AP tests, especially one that you're paying $100 for potentially getting a college credit, and you haven't covered all the material because fourth quarter doesn't end until the end of June. So I think whatever day we do pick for the start date, we shouldn't lengthen the school year by the end date, because it can sometimes when you're taking it, you haven't covered everything, and you're basically just trying to do it for your college.
But don't your AP teachers, and Helen's an AP, so first day he's like, look, this is the AP test, so we are going to finish instruction on this date and then allow an adequate time for review. So the AP dates are already set, correct?
Right. So
okay,
but sometimes it can get skewed because of snow days.
Right.
Well, the number of instructional, while that date is fixed, the number of instructional days at the beginning of the year is what gets compressed.
The calendar that's before you gives 8 additional instructional days before the AP testing date that you would encounter in May. That's the deal. You're taking 100, no matter what, they have to go 180 days. And you can either move the days later and they start mid-September and they go more into January, or you can move them a little in August and they move a little bit forward. And so if you move it 8 days, 8 instructional days before, that gives you 8 more instructional days than you will be provided in any testing window in April and May. You have more time to cover materials no matter what.
Your 8 days are assuming we're agreeing to starting after Labor Day. So that just throw the after Labor Day start out the window. If I start on September 1st, then I only need to find, or August 31st, I only need 3 days. So if you don't cancel school for snow, I have them. Bingo.
Well, first of all, the safety of students and staff comes first. So in the event that there is any kind of inclement weather, I'm going to be the first guy to, no,
I'm just joking with you, from any of the comments up here, I think we're all in agreement that it is virtually impossible to start after Labor Day with the next 2 calendar years. So let's just save everyone a lot of time and comments and emails and just toss that right out. It would be my suggestion as we just discuss this as an informational item.
Yeah.
But, so if we focus from what input we need on the August 26th or the September 1st or August 31st, then you don't have to keep telling me about 8 days.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of starting after Labor Day for the next 2 years. After that, it's,
It's gonna, right.
and if you go to the survey, that was what was overwhelmingly
I
stated.
completely agree with the survey, but that
But
that
that
middle
survey was
survey, but that,
even.
I
62.
But I actually get it
middle
with the
pleases
survey.
nobody.
Well, yes and no. Is if almost 50% of the people want the August start date, and then their next one is, well, if I don't get that, then I could be okay with September 1st. To me, it's here's my preference, but my second choice, I can go with.
still also good too.
Right, and so, because in the survey, I went and looked at the survey, it's like, okay, do you want this, do you want this, do you
I
want
took the
this?
survey, so,
So,
as a parent,
What did you vote for?
clearly not August 26th.
So
Yeah, but
two
that
last,
is people that don't care to the support,
Two
you
last-
come out as a wash.
two last things. One, the mid-year professional development day. I completely understand Nagina's point with respect to needing that break to be able to accomplish what you personally need to accomplish. But I'm curious, you have professional days before the start of the school year. Help me understand the value of the specific of having it then as compared to as you start the school year and utilize all of that professional development throughout the year.
So there's
Wait,
real
wait.
benefit.
So if I could just.
Just wait, before you answer that, though, how many professional development days do we have total?
So you have 10 additional, so kids
Okay.
have to go 180, teachers have to work
I went that out
190,
there,
so there's
okay.
10 days.
Okay.
Right, but not all of it is staff development. Some of it is classroom prep, collaborative planning, those kinds of things.
So those 10 days, we do provide 1 day specifically for classroom prep. All the rest of those days are professional development of some kind and/or a compromise for professional responsibilities depending upon where they fall. That January date, which has dropped out of the calendar for the last several years with the executive order, that is our opportunity to take a pause and say, we are about halfway through the school year. What does our data look like? All the things that we talked about in August as we were getting ready for school, how are we actually doing? Now that we have almost 2 marking periods worth of data, we have discipline data, attendance data, and more importantly, all of our performance data. So this is an opportunity for everybody to get together and really make planful decisions as to how we're going to conclude the year. And specifically, it gives us a real opportunity to take a look at how our kids are progressing through MCAP evaluated ELA and math classes and make adjustments and talk about all. We haven't been able to do it for the last several years. And amazingly, our MCAP scores aren't accelerating the way we would have hoped. In fact, sometimes they're flatlined. In other parts of the state, they're actually going down. So my question is, why are these MCAP scores going down? Well, it could very well be because we keep on starting later. We abbreviate the time before the assessment. We've cut out professional development days where we can actually take a pause and look at stuff. We're compressing our week so the kids are going to school and everybody's working 5 days, 5 days, 5 days, 5 days, going. All of the professional development we have to then do at the end of the school day or in those abbreviated 2-hour release days. And after you've taught with kids and you've gone through all of that, perhaps you're not as available as you could be if you were given the time and space to actually do it. everything that we do is, the reason why we have all the people that we have on that committee and we meet and we talk about all of this is because, everybody gets to throw a rock. Recognize every rock, every pebble has ripples, and all these things have impacts. And so every time we don't listen to the classroom teacher, or we listen to some other voice that has another concern, we move farther afield of what might be best for that student. At the end, if you don't want to go with the fourth Wednesday of August, which we had done historically forever and forever and never was a problem, and really, you've been through calendar, it's done. And we were able to do some creative things in there and do a vertical articulate. We were able to do creative things, but we haven't been able to do that because we've been kind of compelled by an executive order. If you want to go with September 1st, we just have to find 4 days, and it's easy to find 4 days. We can,
August 31st.
if we go with August 30, if we do September 1st forever, or that August, so you only have to find 3 days. You can take them, and Columbus Day gets cut and 2 days get added to the end, and you're done.
No, you don't have to add 2 days to the end. You can look at, like I said, be creative, look at the Christmas thing, because.
Yeah, your Christmas, if you want to abbreviate the Christmas break, we're just going by what the people in the room said.
I have one last
Just saying.
question. So on the calendar, and this was confusing to me, and I think it is to everyone actually. So the June 16th end date for 2021, does that include the snow days?
Yes, it does.
That's if we have 3 days.
So that's
of
if we
snow.
have 3 snow days, then we can back up, and we still have the option to take away, because on the 2021 year, we end on the 16th. On the 2022, which is a Wednesday.
Right.
Right? And then on the I really need a calendar. The 2022 year,
That's right.
no, I mean like I have it, it's on, I just have to get to it. So then on the 2022 day, June 2022, 6/14 is the end date, and that's on a Tuesday.
Right, that's because the election day shifted it.
Correct, which is,
Right.
so
Right.
even if we would have to add
If you added 2
2
snow
days,
days,
we would still be ending in the second full week of June.
yes.
Which, and if you want to go back historically, Scott, I'm sure we've
Yes.
always usually gotten out around the 13th to the 18th
Yes.
of June,
Yeah.
correct?
Right, so what I'm saying is if you wanted to make that Monday, August 31st be the start date, we'd have to find 3 days. If you deleted Columbus Day off and
Use it
you,
as a 2-hour early dismissal.
and put it back as a 2-hour dismissal as it had been, and you added 2 days on the end, it makes it end on a Friday in June, which is fine, and that's if we use our snow
end on a
days.
Wednesday.
Use the snow-
Yeah, under 6/16 right now is Wednesday for 2021.
That's with the snow days.
That's with the snow days,
Right.
so if we
Right.
didn't use those 3 snow days, they'd end on Friday the 11th.
Right.
So I'm concerned about, it's gonna mean we're gonna be feeding kids during the summer for longer, which is, I know, a challenge. Dr. Hall is braiding things together to make sure kids don't go hungry. But lastly, my preference, if we're gonna go with the middle option, is I would strongly suggest starting on September 1st rather than Monday the 31st. And my thought is that if people are gonna take an end of summer vacation, they can take it that last full week of August. They can come home on Sunday, August 30th, and they can let their kids kind of get back into their lives, have a day of recuperation on the 31st and start on the 1st. Then they've got a 4-day week. They go to a 3-day weekend and another 4-day week, ease them back into the school year.
Well, and that makes, and now that the ending date includes the 3 days, that makes it a little bit more clear, because that is very confusing to people just in the general public about whether or not that's truly the end and the 3
Well,
days are tacked on, or that's the end and the
Our
back up.
our average snow days that we use in a year is about 3.5. So we almost always have gone to that final day, which is why we publish that
Right.
one. And then if we go beyond that 3, that's when we have the extra days, the other 2 days that are
Right.
currently holidays that we've used. But for the most part, that is the most predictable last day
Right.
in the calendar.
Right. Okay.
So if you go go to September 1st, that Tuesday, then you're gonna have to find another day.
Right, which could very clearly be because the 16th of June is a Wednesday. So that would just put the last day of school on a Thursday for 2021, for June of 2021.
But that would mean if we cut the 3 days out, because we didn't need the 3 inclement days, the last day of school would be on a Monday, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, but then we asked for a waiver. We've done that before too.
Well, no, again,
You
so,
could- if,
so you have to find 3 days. So right now, in,
4, if we go September
right,
1st,
so
it would be 4.
just for the first,
Yeah.
for the 3 days.
I
you-
just 3 days.
So you
for
just do the
regular.
3 days, you cut Columbus Day, you bought a day,
Mm-hmm.
okay? You add 2 more to the end, so you're adding June 17th on Thursday, June 18th on Friday,
Mm-hmm.
okay? If we don't use those snow days at all, we end on June 15th, which is a Tuesday. So that's,
Mm-hmm. That would work.
that's fine, okay? And that could be the model that we put together, and that you could then, if you wanna go and have that Monday off, you've gotta find another day. And we wouldn't wanna go to, we'd have to then, the last day would be June 21st, and we really can't do
No,
that.
we don't want to do
So
that.
then you'd have to go back into all the days and figure out what you wanna cut.
Right.
No, I think going on that Monday would be,
Read,
I
did you walk up the hill both
I
ways
woke
in the
up with
snow
this in
too?
my head.
What I'd really like is for you to take all of our comments back to the calendar committee, let them digest them, let them make a recommendation back to us, whether it is that they agree with our comments and they want to send that forward, or whether they have very specific reasons why they still prefer one of the other calendars, and that's what I would like to hear. Because as Mrs. Washington points out, there are a lot of people on that committee that comprise a lot of different people with input into this, whether it's staff, parents, students. I know we clearly have our thoughts about what we'd like to see and why, but I just can't ignore what they've brought forward. So if you would please, that's my request.
Will do.
Thank you.
Mrs. Washington, you get the last word, since we all cut you
I
off.
already said it.
So we'll bring back
2
some
models
of the
and their
mobility issues, as well as the people coming in. And we will model out a calendar that has us starting on Monday, August
31st.
31st, or
The first.
Tuesday, September 1st. The only thing I would caution with starting on Tuesday, September 1st, is if you're gonna say September 1st start date, then next year it goes to Wednesday, and so like you're
Right,
gonna,
it's pushing out.
you just keep on
pushing out.
pushing out.
All right, so in this case then, the 2-year model out would essentially be that Monday prior to Labor Day.
Yes.
Well, yeah,
Am I-
I'm not worried about the next year, whether we start on September 1st or not. I mean, I think that the Tuesday is the day that we should be striving for, if that's what
So,
we
all right,
decide on.
2
I'm not-
options. All
I'm
right,
not worried
I
about
will
that.
bring it back to the calendar committee. We'll present some different models to you.
For the record, it's easy to find 3 days. It's gonna be hard to find 4. And that's gonna be interesting, because people have very strong opinions.
Right, I just shared my thought process, or I'm not, if the majority of folks go, nope, we'd rather do this, then I'll go with that. But I at least had the opportunity to explain what I was thinking and why.
Well, so the one thing I did stress with the calendar committee is that they're to make their decisions and recommendations, and that once they made their recommendations, it's your
That's
calendar.
correct.
It's completely your calendar,
That
it's
is correct.
completely your decision. It is, so whatever they, what they have, because they were like, it's like, no, you're making a recommendation to the board completely owns the calendar.
I understand that. I just would like to understand what their rebuttal is to our comments. That's all. Karen's going, I'm gonna kill it.
Scott's sketchy. Look at him over there. He's like.
No, I've been doing calendar committee for almost 18 years.
It's a tough one.
I've been doing since 2000, I think my first calendar committee was 2001. So I've been
Right,
doing
but
it
I
for
mean-
like 18 years, and every year we kind of go through this, and we never had we always were the third Wednesday. The rationale behind it was very specific, you know, and we had people coming in and they had their open houses on Monday and Tuesday, and they had there was a whole method to our madness. The Wednesday when we got in, we'd all visit, and it could be a pretty leisurely day where we're welcoming and connecting, and then the next day, Thursday, was kind of get to it, and we'll kind of walk through, and we're doing all our stuff. And Friday we could be really and then we had a break, then we had a full week to really get into the routine. Then we had Labor Day, a 3-day weekend where we could kind of relax and then come right back to it. Instructionally, that makes it for a and I taught with that, you know, for 10 years. That really is that's a model that works. I mean, it's a model that works. Again, it's your calendar. This post Labor Day start.
Oh,
Well,
we're
we've
not.
scrapped that.
We scrapped it.
We've
Oh no,
already scrapped it.
that's what moved the whole calendar thing. Up to that point, the whole public conversation was about things like earlier start date, the charter school starting in the first week of August, which is a 5-star school and outperforming almost all of our other schools, year-round schools. There was this whole conversation about how do you limit the summer, that summer break, and then suddenly it's been like, well, we need to keep summer, and everything like that, and we've seen things stagnate. We've seen our chronic absentee rate go up because we're going in and you got to be there 5 days, and mental health days and all of this stuff. It's just, you know, when you see all the stones that have been cast into the pond and the water's all ripply and people are going, why is the water ripply? It's because everybody's tossing their pebbles. I look forward to that conversation, going back and bringing that group in. Most importantly, it's a great group. Everybody's really comfortable with talking through their thought processes, which is really nice. So.
Thank you for your presentation.
Absolutely. I look forward to our follow-up.
Let's go on.
Well, and I guess just to end, I would say to the superintendent, you know, if we shift this by a little bit, but not back to the fourth Wednesday in August, if our test scores, if our students are continuing to struggle because of that, then I would expect you would bring a recommendation forward to say, this is when we need to start.
Yeah, we can look
For
at
the
it
record, I'm bringing the recommendation before you is my recommendation. My recommendation is that we start the 4th Wednesday of the month of August, as we always had, and that is absolutely my recommendation. And anything that we do outside, will gather all the data, but my recommendation to you is that. And I understand all the other factors that weigh into decision making, but that is my recommendation to you. If your response is we want to start, then we'll give you all the data and we'll help with that. But I have given you my recommendation.
Got it.
Okay, so to follow that.
All right, who's up
Ms.
next?
Faulkner and Dr. Zappers.
Come on up.
Looking forward to it. Let's see how we can tear up the curriculum now.
Well,
there's no more time, so.
This is the
fun stuff.
well, it is, but I'm looking at it, I was like, wow, usually we get pages and pages and pages, and this year, no.
That committee meeting once a month has really helped,
Super.
so.
Because we're already doing everything that Kerwin is recommending that we do.
Well,
Too bad they don't
In all
understand.
honesty,
Too bad
I mean,
they
in
don't get
listening-
that.
In listening to the 2-hour and 40-minute or however long that presentation was yesterday, so.
yeah. Well, and what's going before you today is mostly how do you increase access to rigorous curriculum, and that's what's built into the
exciting.
study. So it's good stuff.
Only we had 8 additional instruction days.
And just think if you had 8 additional instructional days before you did it. So the thing is, I am looking for I am a competitive person. I am looking for every
so am I, Scott.
opportunity to just nudge up. So anything you can do to give an advantage to our children every day of instruction before you assess them, meaningful, engaged instruction gives them advantage. And so I felt very strong from a manager. The later start date is great. We love the extra time to make sure that all of our buildings are ready and all of our people are hired out as much as they can be. I mean, it's from a management standpoint, the later start time is really beneficial to the the seamless opening. But instructionally, if that's the real, and my data, Alex and I forever go back and forth about the smallest changes and whether it's statistically significant and driving toward root cause.
We've turned to the state legislature. We're going to talk more about the calendar and school start date than we are about anything else.
All right,
We're
you're
ready.
on.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Still morning.
Today, Lisa and I have been honored to take Mike Watson's chair. He's been displaced in a different position. I say that affectionately, for no apparent reason, but job responsibility shifted around, so I was honored to be co-chair with Lisa on the Program Studies Committee. Lisa has 55 slides. I wanted to cut it down today. This is, you see, Lisa's going to be verbose
She
today,
just
so.
wants to over.
She wants to beat the committee, the 25 minutes
Overachiever.
allotted. She wants to go 50 minutes. So I'll see what we can do. But anyways, consistent with the policy here, again, it does follow the calendar committee. Basically, the first readings today, the public hearing's the 29th, and February the 12th is the second reading, after we share our sort of process. Throughout the year, and I've been part of the program studies since 2007. I've been a member, and now I'm a co-chair. This is the best it's ever been. It's a year-round process now. We review submissions throughout the year continuously on the May and October dates. And again, it's a collaborative group that gets together full of teacher teams, counselors, administrators, and content supervisors. We do have monthly agendas. Lisa's very particular with the notes and shares those out on a regular basis, so everybody's looped in. The following meetings for this past year were on the dates provided on the slide. And the committee members, voluminous. They take up about 4 slides. Again, reflect the teachers, the counselors, the schedulers, our office and assessment accountability, content supervisors, and certainly administrators. Collectively, we feel, as Scott said, we want to provide as much access and vibrance to a curriculum that students will optimize. So.
And I'm going to pretty much start reading verbatim to slides. I don't do that, but for this presentation I do. But I want to say a few things before I do. And that is just a reminder, the program of studies of what can be offered. It doesn't mean it necessarily will be offered. And the offerings are based on a school's staffing as well as student requests for a course. So I just want to that's always a question I get from parents and community members. It's in the program of studies, why isn't it in our school? And there are reasons why people make the choices, but if it's not in the program of studies, it can't be offered. So that's why we have that ongoing look to see what needs to be changed or updated or revised. And the other thing is I just have to publicly thank Peg O'Connor because she's taken over the publication as a Google form and site with the program of studies, and is the only time. Last year we had 1 editing request the entire year, and that has never happened as long as I've known the program of studies. So a huge thanks to Peg O'Connor for her work. So I'm going to start with the new courses as we always do, and these are fine arts new courses, and we're proposing Dance 1, and the rationale for that is this course will work to complete the Academy of Visual Performing Arts, AVPA, programming to include dance. Experience in this course are based on the fundamentals of ballet, modern and jazz dance, and this course does satisfy a fine arts credit. And likewise, we would have Dance 2 go in at the same time with the rationale of this course would build upon the skills learned in Dance 1. And again, it would satisfy a fine arts credit. The other new course for fine arts is graphic design, and this course would provide a course that will explore graphic design history along with the latest in design technologies to create visual communications. And again, it satisfies a fine arts credit. You may say, don't we already have graphics design? We do in the tech center, but we don't in our comprehensive high school. So this would allow that course to be taught in all our high schools, again, if we have staffing or students who choose that. Another new course, very exciting. Last year we came to you with Italian 1, and now we're coming to you because it was so successful. We have over 40 students being successful in Italian 1 right now at Leonardtown High School in the pilot. We're coming to you to ask for Italian 2, which would build upon this skills learned in Italian 1, which was added last year. And again, we all know that 2 world language credits are required for completion of a university pathway for graduation. And then we have a new course in mathematics, and this is a dual enrollment course. And it's a quantitative literacy. It's a dual enrollment course that teaches algebraic reasoning and modeling skills and emphasizes critical thinking and statistical reasoning. And this was really developed in collaboration with CSM. They're trying to really have 2 branches of mathematics at CSM, and please interject because you've been very instrumental in this discussion. A STEM mathematics pathway and a non-STEM, which would be business classes and things like that pathway. And this would start going to that other pathway that's non-STEM, but still giving those mathematics. It's very heavy in statistics and algebra 2 components. The intent of this course would still to be taught in our high schools, even though it is on campus. This would bring it more readily into our high schools as a dual enrollment option for mathematics.
Yeah, the power of this course is that it satisfies the non-STEM associate's degree that you would need for CSM. So if students take this class and they sort of matriculate to CSM, that would satisfy their mathematical requirement for a non-STEM AA degree that they offer and confer over there at CSM.
Before you go on this one, quantitative literacy, does that count for a math credit for graduation?
It does, but it does not at this time. We're having dialogue with MSDE because it doesn't replace the need to have Algebra 2 as that university completer pathway. But what we're doing is having discussions now with MSDE because we're sharing the syllabus with them because it contains so much Algebra 2 in it. We're hoping that they'll make that decision that it can count as the Algebra 2.
If it will not count for a high school credit, for a graduation credit, you'll make sure that that's clearly indicated in the
It
program
does
of
count for a
studies?
credit, it just
Right.
may not help you get the pathway.
Right, but so it's.
We need to be clear.
Yes.
Okay.
So you need 3 credits of math right now to earn a high school diploma. What's being discussed is that you need 4 credits of math.
Right.
This would count for a credit no matter
Fourth
what.
credit.
The question is whether or not it would count as your Algebra 2 required credit
okay.
to complete your University of Maryland sequence.
But I completely agree, because that's been my discussion too, as I think we have to be very, very clear, especially when we're presenting to counselors these changes, which we always do in March, or February 13th, we're presenting right after the board meeting. What the changes are, we have to be very clear on that, because that really could impact students.
Yep, it does.
But we're hoping we're gonna get that information back from MSDE saying yes.
If they
We're not the
would,
only county doing this. Charles and Calvert have done
Calvert
this
are
too,
all-
correct?
Charles for sure, Calvert may be in the conversation.
I mean, that would be, for somebody who's not necessarily going to go down a STEM pathway, that's a fantastic, like, senior level math course for somebody who's done, or junior level math course, if they're not ready to go into AP stats perhaps.
That's right.
This is a new pathway, so it looks a little bit different. There was also an attachment within the board docs that kind of spelled out what those 4 courses look like. And so it is a new pathway. I've asked Mr. Boyle to be here if we had specific questions, because it is new to all of us. And it is promoted and sponsored by MSDE, so it was very important that we put it in the program studies. It is a new completer pathway, and it contains 4 1-credit courses, all designed to be done in basically 2 years, but there are different models of how students could go through this program. The 4 1-credit courses are the apprenticeship-related instruction, and that is spelled out in the description I gave you, and then 3 learning experiences. The total apprenticeship work-based learning is to be 450 hours, so the way I see it, even though it wasn't spelled out exactly, I'm thinking experience 1 is 150 hours, experience 2 is 150, and experience 3 is 150, to comprise the 450 hours.
I do have a question on that,
Sure.
because on the paper that you gave us, you have work experience 1, work experience 2. But if all 4 work experience, well, you have 3 experiences on there, are they all to be completed in the 12th grade? Because that's what you have for experience 1 and experience 2 is grade 12.
Yes.
So,
I believe the work experience is all to be done in a single year. However, the first course,
2 years.
the apprenticeship-related instruction, is designed to be done the year before those work-based learning courses would be done. So for example, if I was a welder, I'd go to that tech center to do the apprenticeship-related instruction, which is my welding 1 class that year. And then I would work with some kind of welding company or something else like that for the apprenticeship work-based learning. Instead of going to welding 2 the next year like they typically do, they would actually work at that company for that second year of welding as an apprenticeship program.
So that's why I was trying to figure out where we're getting 3, because like if you do the first half of the year and the second half of the year, but somehow we're not.
It's by hours, not by time. Am I right, Mr. Boyle?
Yeah, there's a couple things in there. The apprentice-related instruction, that first one, can be exactly what Ms. Bachner said. It doesn't necessarily have to be. We take demand signals from companies all over, and they let us know what they need out of a student. So that student in welding might not necessarily might work for a welding company. He may work for another defense contractor that does welding, but also incorporates other things. So whatever the demand signal that company says relates to that first one. The 1, 2, and 3, to be quite honest with you, the only reason there's a 1, 2, and 3 is because MSD has to have 4 SCED codes, and that gives them all 4 SCED codes.
Okay.
So they're really all the same experience. It's 450 hours with whoever that defense contractor, and I say defense contractor because that's who we're primarily working with right now in our pilot year.
Okay.
But this can turn into anything. It could be an insurance agent. It can be anything. So that apprentice-related instruction, that first one, will be dictated by the company in which hires that student.
And the 450 hours in 1 year, if a child, and they're probably going to have a work release schedule, that's 2.5 hours each school day. So chances are they're going to have an abbreviated schedule in which they'll work and they'll go to lunch, and then in the afternoon they'll be on work release, and it will be this apprenticeship work-based experience. Very similar to career research development, CRD, except this is much, much more regulated, overseen, purposeful, and driven towards being gainfully and professionally employed.
And also mentioned during the Kerwin presentation yesterday.
It is very much part.
Yes.
We're waiting
Okay.
to
I
see
just
that.
couldn't figure out why we had
It's
3 on there, and that's why I'm
With
like,
one
wait a
description,
minute,
right?
yeah.
The pathway has to have 4 SCED codes.
Yeah.
Well, then
And-
that makes
and-
sense. That's what I couldn't
Yeah.
figure out.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Boyle, though, for
That-
being here. I appreciate that. Then we're going to go into what Dr. Smith was talking about, is we're really trying to open up things a lot. And I'm very, very excited because these came to us as proposals from teachers and things like that. So I'm very excited that we are really thinking this way in all our schools, in our classrooms. And the first one is Theater 2, 3, and 4. And the current prerequisite states completion of the prior course. For example, they have to complete Theater 1 to be considered to go into Theater 2. And the proposed prerequisite is either completion of the prior course or a teacher recommendation. And this is just to be more inclusive of a wider range of learners. We have a community that has a lot of community theater, and kids are coming to us with skills so that they sometimes don't need to take the prior class. The next one is advanced placement art history. The current prerequisite is completion of at least 2 high school visual arts and or social studies courses and approval of the instructor. Again, we are going to have a prerequisite of none, and that is in coherence with the College Board recommendations, and that is to be more inclusive of a wide variety or range of learners. Painting, the current prerequisite was participation in AVPA, our Performing Arts Academy, and we would like to change it to completion of Visual Art 1 and teacher recommendation, and we would not only be inclusive of more learners, it would now be available at all high schools rather than just at Chopticon where we have AVPA. Pre-engineering, this was also very exciting to kind of bring forth to you. The current prerequisite was Foundations of Technology, which you know is a graduation requirement. And we've asked that there be no prerequisite at this time. So 9th graders who want to take both pre-engineering, which counts as an advanced technology at this time, as well as Foundations of Technology, could take both at the same time.
Or computer science.
Yes. We have some title changes, and we're gonna start with English, and English would like to rename and renumber. We already have American Literature, of course, but we would like to change it to American Literature A and American Literature B. This rationale was because we have some students as a graduation requirement that did not pass an English 10 assessment on MCAP, and so if we scheduled them into American Literature B, that would be our clue that we need to incorporate the Bridge Project into that course, so we could very carefully and schedule those students to get the supports and complete the graduation requirement while still getting the curriculum at the same time. And the counselors were the ones with Michelle Gallant-Wall that brought this forth, because this would really help us make sure the right kids are in the right spots when it came time to schedule. We also had a title change of science, and to rename Environmental Science and Environmental Science CM to Physical Science in the Environment. Rationale: to better align to the next generation science standards in preparation of the MISA, which is a graduation requirement. And just to let you know, all curriculum changes were done for that course last summer, and it is being taught and it is being successful at this time. A title change of fine arts. We want to rename Commercial Art and Commercial Art 1 and Commercial Art 2 to Digital Art 1 and Digital Art 2, just to get with the times, to better reflect the revised course curriculum that includes more digital tools and resources, which is the next slide, because it's a description change to add just that to Digital Art 1 if that is approved. The rationale: the description has been revised to include use of digital tools and resources such as Adobe Illustrator. We had some grade band changes, which don't occur that often, so again, a really nice thing to see. We want to change all the following course grade bands to grades 9 through 12. Principles of Business Administration and Management, currently it starts at grade 10. Computer Applications in Financial and Data Management, currently it begins at grade 10. Pre-engineering, which we talked about already about the prerequisite change, we'd also like to change the grade band. Currently it's 10 through 12. And Geography, currently it's 10 through 12, we would like to make it 9 through 12. And the rationale, again, is to be more inclusive of the wider range of learners and responsive to student requests. And then we've also talked about AP World Art History before, about the prerequisite change, and we would like to also change the grade band from 11-12 to 10-12 to be more inclusive. We have talked about this before during our dual enrollment conversations, and we are definitely on board for that, to label all dual enrollment courses as stated in the course descriptions. When it says type in the program of studies, instead of saying academic or advanced placement, it would say dual enrollment, to just be ease of use for the reader.
Does that also include, this is gonna not come out right, but definition of dual enrollment, like that the parents have to understand that they have an action in order to enroll their student?
That comes in the pages before the,
I
but
understand that,
we
but
need to make sure that,
in all
yeah.
honesty, it needs to be on the courses, because I went through that this year at ChapterCon with the Principles of Finance class. So unless, if you have someone who's not reading the
Gotcha.
entire book and they're just looking at the course description, it is not completely clear.
So we need to, what you're saying is in every single course description where it's a dual enrollment course, we need to make sure that it's clear that they do not get dual enrollment unless they register
Either refer them back
for
to the
it.
dual enrollment section earlier, or indicate what your parent and student responsibility is in order to get enrolled for dual
Absolutely, can
enrollment.
do that.
Because otherwise, you're leaving people with the impression that the school system's taking care of it, and they're not.
Yep.
Not because they're not
It's
doing
not
it,
their
it's not their
responsibility.
responsibility to do it, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Okay. This time, any questions or comments?
So all of the courses that are being renamed, or is the curriculum staying the same?
Yes, the curriculum was changed for the science courses. The physical science courses last summer, according to MSDE's rules and regulations, but yes, all the course descriptions are staying the same.
Thank you.
The only thing is with opening it up to like 9 through 12 or 10 through 12, which I think is fantastic, because some kids need that, extra push, to try something challenging. There will still be the same prerequisites in order, or is it teacher recommended to be in a certain course?
Unless we came to you with a prerequisite change, the prerequisites will remain the same as they are in the program of studies.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I like all of the the lack of prerequisites for a lot of those. I mean, for any student that leaves and then goes to a liberal arts college, that's really like their first time to explore a lot of these areas, and that's, kind of doing them a disservice, because what if they decide that they really do like art history, but they don't have the opportunity to, to explore that in high school, and, then their first shot at it is college. It could completely change their, their thought process on some things, so. Mrs. Washington?
It's fine with me. I think you did a wonderful job. It was a lot of work to get this done. Good job.
Thank you.
I love the fact that you're changing to indicate whether a course is dual enrollment or not. And I would just further reiterate that where the course satisfies a high school graduation requirement, that clearly be indicated course by course. I'm thinking of the zoology dual enrollment course that is not a science credit it's a science credit but does not qualify as a high school graduation requirement. And we need to make sure students and parents understand what is and what isn't, so that we're not running up against, wow, I thought my kid was gonna be only in school half day next year, their senior year, and now that's not gonna be possible because they're missing a lab course for science. Yeah. So, as we say, you guys live with it all the time. As parents, you're going, does it work? Does it not work? Mm-hmm. You ask your kid, they're like, I don't know. So anything we can do to make their lives easier, I think will pay dividends all around.
I agree.
So, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, Chesapeake Public Charter School, their annual update.
Let me just look here. Yeah, I did. I just took a sec. They didn't close it back down. Got it. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Today, I'd like to bring forward the Chesapeake Public Charter School public evaluation in the spirit of transparency, which is aligned with the timeline in the new contract. And then midway through, we're going to kind of finish that and let Mrs. Funya and Mary Beth Nauman is the chairperson of the governing board. She had a family emergency last night and is not able to be here. So Shannon Norris, who's the treasurer of the Alliance, they're going to talk to you about moving forward, the status of their federal grant very quickly. Okay? All right. So just some contractual language to set the stage. What we did agree with the contract that you're very familiar with, we just went through the renewal process, is that the way the evaluation works is in a certain time period. Once the year concludes and we get the MCAP scores back from MSDE and the financial audit of the Alliance, whichever is later, there's a period of time where they provide a self-assessment to me, we look at it, we check everything out, there's an opportunity for some dialogue, and we present it to you. So that's why we're here. Basically, exactly what happens, there's the timeline. They provide us the audit that is completed by ASCII and ASCII of the Alliance funds. They have, St. Mary's has 30 days to respond if there is any kind of concern. That is all vetted through our fiscal point of contact, who's Mr. Springer, who then shares it with Mrs. McCourt. And ultimately, it comes to you through a Board of Ed communication update. And then if there is any follow-up, CCSA responds. So ASCII and ASCII conducted financial periods ending June 30th of 2018 and June 30th of 2019. Remember, we're evaluating last year. So that information was shared with the board via communication update from Fiscal Services, and there were no significant deficiencies nor material weaknesses identified in those periods of time. And there's just the language that was pulled directly from. No instances of non-compliance or other matters that would be compliance issues. And then we took a look at their academic achievement, and Dr. Smith referenced it earlier. You've seen it as Dr. Jaffers does his data report. But for both the elementary and the middle school, which is how Chesapeake Public Charter School is tagged, they are a 5-star rated school, which is the highest area of achievement. This is just the math portion. You can see their actual numbers. They do not have enough of a group. You'll see a blank there, and that's from the English language learners. And then there it is for middle school. Same thing.
Is the average, is that across the Maryland or here in St. Mary's?
The far right column.
The far right
St.
column.
Mary's County.
St. Mary's County.
Okay.
Yes. So, in essence, and I know that you've looked at a lot of their documents during the renewal, they've met or exceeded the achievement status. They are a 5 school for elementary and middle. Their staff that are credentialed, they're certified and credentialed staff are vetted through our Human Resources Department. They are St. Mary's County Public School employees. The facility, owned by CCSA, is compliant and inspected. All of that information is provided. There, we do have an ongoing financial meeting monthly on site at the school, and that allows our St. Mary's County Public School Fiscal Services people to talk with their accountant. Ms. Funya and I are also present during those meetings. And their governance and management requirements have been met, such as their 501(c) status. So they are in good standing, reflective of the 2018-2019 school year. Are there any questions about their evaluation at this point?
Do they have any audit findings? I know that you had a clean report, but did you have any specific audit findings on any of the test work that was completed?
No.
Okay.
And those audit reports are available online. If you go onto the school, if you go under the Alliance tab, you will see the actual report in its entirety for the last 4 or 5 years, but certainly the new one is up, yes. Okay, so that being said, we wanted to give the Alliance and Ms. Funya a chance to just talk about where they are now and where they're going. And I'm happy to click for you if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Okay.
You can stay right there.
Okay.
Just as a reminder of where we are in the grand scheme of our expansion, this year we are at 460 students, and this was our first year of having 3 4th grade classes. So we'll be rolling into next year with 480 students, pushing up to 3 5th grade classes, and we envision the completion of the expansion in fiscal year 24 so far. As you know, we were awarded a federal grant through MSDE. We are in year 2 of that grant process because you know how notice the grant awards kind of migrate later in the year. So we are at that place right now, but we have been able to purchase our lottery software from Smart Choice. We have purchased all of the new materials of instruction, furniture, books, technology, as well as upgrading the technical infrastructure for the new portion of the building that we are just now in completion of. So that included things like the wiring, the speaker systems, the sprinklers, fire alarms, all those pieces that needed to be there in order for compliance, but we weren't allowed to actually physically use that grant for any type of physical construction. So that's where we are there. So this year we have a new media center, we have a new music room, and a new 4th grade classroom. The previous media center was turned into the 4th grade classroom. We have gotten our use and occupancy and final inspections completed. So we are in the process of moving into that new space, and you can just see the picture there. And I would welcome you anytime if you would like to come down and see the new corner of the building as we slowly expand into it. And that will include the media center and the music space, and then you can just see the previous media space, which has been turned into that 4th grade classroom.
Can I ask a question while we're on the construction? So, so next year it would be the 5th grade. So, do you already have a bid out for construction for doing the next classroom?
No, we don't need to because we kind of forward thought. And by bringing the music classroom down into that space as well, we're able to turn what was the previous music classroom into the 3rd, 5th grade classroom.
Okay.
So we have a year off of construction, which is good. You can see there that we have just a comparison of our demographics from last year to this year. This is our current year, 2019-20, and where we are right at this moment with our demographics. And primarily, we wanted you to see that so you can see that by waiting the lottery, we are increasing our economically disadvantaged population, which was our intention. So you can see that there. We just finished the lottery process, so that closed on December 31st. This is our new lottery software, Smart Choice, which we're very excited about because it really helps to house all of the information historically, as well as be able to provide us with current data of where we are in the lottery. I didn't have specifics at the time we put this PowerPoint presentation together, but I did compile a little bit for you as we go through this process. This year we had 407 applicants. The bulk of those applicants are in the kindergarten classroom. It's about 131, and that's about 32% of the total applicants applying for those kindergarten spots, which is where we have the most availability. Right now, we're looking at about 24 of our families that are bringing in siblings into that kindergarten, so that leaves us 36 spaces open to the public. We have our top 5 zip codes were Lexington Park, California, Great Mills, Leonardtown, Hollywood, and I thought it was interesting because in 6th place was Mechanicsville. So that was nice to see the northern population interested. And overall, we had 14% of those applications who said that they are currently economically disadvantaged based on their status in current public schools, St. Mary's County Public Schools. And we had about 8% of those applicants who said, we don't currently have that status, but we want to apply. And they have until January 31st to be able to do that. And then that will give us our number for waiting our lottery. And then we will run the lottery on, I believe it's February 3rd. So that's where we are in that process.
It's easier to run the lottery now.
Yes, no more hours and hours with the judge pulling
The bingo balls.
We're able to just click the button. It's fabulous. All right, and then just a few photos of our year last year. You know, last year I think the highlight for us was our opera. Our 3rd grade opera was a year-long process by our 3rd grade students, and I think that was a highlight for us in terms of this is what arts integration looks like. And so those students created that opera from the very beginning, and all along it was fully integrated into what they were learning in the classroom and their standards. So that was really incredible, and there'll be another one. So be prepared for your invitation coming from 8-year-olds. So that's it. So if you have any questions for us, just kind of about where we are or where we're moving, we would be happy to entertain that. And again, I welcome you to come down anytime to see the new space.
I have no questions, thank you.
You answered the question I had, so.
Yep, I think, yeah, we're good. Very excellent job. So thank you.
And you're doing phenomenally well in the state and around the nation. I remember when other charter schools were coming to talk to you about how do you do it, how do you make it successful, because many of the charter schools around the nation fail, and many in the state of Maryland, and you're still here. You're doing a wonderful job, and it's proven by the number of people that apply. And so many people say, how do I get in there? And I said, well, you have to apply. It's a lottery. It's fair. That's the way it is. So you can get on the wait list, or you can try to apply each year. So thank you very much for the success that you have. And you work very hard. Ms. Allen and I were here from the beginning when we were looking for locations for the schools. We went all over the county and chapter code, and the place that you chose, it was in bad shape, but I could see the potential in that building. You had room for expansion. You had an owner who wanted to work with you, so it was excellent, and it's turned out to be very well, and it continues to improve. Thank you so much.
I'm just going to say congratulations, job well done. It's doing great and looks fantastic. So thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. McCoy?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Before you are the December financial reports. On the revenue side, we have collected $114.8 million and remaining balance of $111.7 million. All items are on track. On the expenditure side, there are no items of particular note. We have year-to-date encumbrances and expenditures of $210.2 million, and available balance is $16.3 million. Year-to-date, recognized 92.8% of the budget. I would like to note, though, that as a result of staffing turnover, though, we are recognizing a higher than usual amount of salary savings. Are there any questions?
No.
I have one question, and I can't find it in here right off the top of my head. But expenses for substitute teachers, is that on point? Is it
Yes.
above? Is it?
It's right on,
Okay.
on point, and that's found in category 03, which is our instructional salary, so it's lumped in with all the
Right,
others.
that's what I assumed, so.
Yes, and we do not encumber that or our EPED money, so that's still as part of that remaining budgetary balance right now.
Okay, and are we still fighting the battle about finding substitutes on a regular basis, or is?
That has significantly improved over the last couple of years as a
Okay.
result of our dedicated substitutes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Nope.
Mary, Kathy?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
All right. Now for the recommended budget, 2021.
Do you mind if I go grab some more water?
No, go ahead.
Should we take a break?
No, we should.
Keep going.
Did you not?
Yeah, we can click it ourselves.
Changing it without him knowing.
Okay, all right, Scott, give us like 2 minutes, we have
Okay.
a water break in here.
Well, that's fine too, because I'm, wanna.
It's working.
I'm not doing anything. This is our 6th rodeo that we've all been pretty much
More like a circus, but
together talking about budget. And one of the things that Ms. McCourt and I believe very strongly is that, you know, we need to decide on a pretty consistent format for the way we present the information, the way we construct the budget book, the way we roll it out as we go, so that you can compare year to year. If you open up the budget book from 2016 and the budget book proposed for 2021, you're going to see that they're laid out in similar fashion. The pages are almost identical, so you can really see how we're moving forward. Because if you change it from year to year, it becomes very challenging to track it. So we're going to start with it's a very familiar slide, committed to the future, our 5 S's, the commitments that we make to our students and staff that we made in 2016, we refined in 2017, and we've been carrying forward for 18, 19 this year and into 2021. How we are committed to students, but not only just to students, but also to how we sustainably work with our students. How we are committed to our staff, but also very importantly, how we sustain that investment with our staff, how we are committed to our schools, and then how we commit ourselves to maintaining those schools, and then ultimately how we communicate our message out to others, how we bring other people in, how we partner proactively, and how we invest in being able to communicate that story. So those slides are the same slides that we've used for the last several years, but they continue to underpin our work. We don't move away from our mission statement, and we don't move away from our commitments, the commitments that we've made for the last 6 years. So our budget priority number 1 is the same budget priority that we had last year and the year before that. It turns out it's our people. It is also our most overwhelming expense. When you take a look at the members in ESMIC, our members in SMASA, the contracted services that we bring in to round out what we provide to our students, and then ultimately that salaries and wages, that's $162 million. That's only part of the benefit that our employees receive. We also have health care, Social Security, retirement, and workers' comp. All of those fixed charges represent $55 million. Together, $218 million of the proposed budget is just in people cost. And that's 93% of the overall budget moving forward. Our budget priority number 2 is, if you've got 93% of your budget invested in people, how do you make sure that you support them, and how do you make sure that they are appropriately supporting our students? Because it all starts and ends really in the classroom. So 1.3, students are safe and supported in their academic, social, and emotional growth. 4 things to really highlight that are in this budget: special education teachers, special education paraeducators, pupil personnel workers, and safety assistants. There's much more spread throughout this budget, but this budget in itself is emphasizing those 3 things. Special education teachers, special education paraeducators. Obviously, this has been an ongoing and active conversation in the United States for decades. It is amplified in the last several years, and certainly within this year in particular, we have all kinds of stories about escalating student behavior, the distractions that we see in the classroom, the challenges faced by educators and support staff. So this budget reflects an investment in that. In the unrestricted portion of the budget, 5 additional special education teachers, 5 paraeducators, and then looking to grant funds to about half that same investment, if not more. As Kerwin comes forward, and if we find more money, some of that is specifically dedicated to special education, so we would look to that. And those special education teachers specifically, where we're targeting them, are K through 2. We have to start our kids out right. We have to start the kids out in a really inclusive, embracing, instructionally engaging environment that supports all children. And when our children aren't successful in situations like that, we have to have alternatives and options. And so that's why specifically you're seeing a teacher paraeducator pair, so that we can set up some additional classroom spaces for some of our kids that we might need. I think I've covered all the notes. So now, each one of the directors are going to have an opportunity to come before you at the next meeting and kind of really unpack during that work session, but I asked them to give me specific notes, and so I'm reading the notes as we go through. And there was a whole bunch of notes for special education. Pupil personnel worker, that's just one more pupil personnel worker. Right now, we have 6 PPWs who are servicing 29 school sites, and 2 of our school sites, Spring Ridge and Great Mills, we've got a pupil personnel worker there full-time.
So just so I'm completely clear.
Right.
Without cracking through the budget book, so it's 10 special ed teachers, 5 from us, 5 from grant funding
No.
if available.
No,
Yes.
it's 5 new from the unrestricted
Uh-huh.
and 5 new paraeducators. It's
Okay.
10 special ed positions from
Okay.
the unrestricted.
All right.
And then with the
That was kind of all
restricted,
lumped
yeah,
together.
when that comes together, we'll,
Okay.
we'll be talking about this. And that's broken out in your budget book, and when,
I know, but just,
And it's actually broken out by category in a few slides, so we'll go through.
right, but just to make sure we were all clear on what you
Yes.
are presenting.
it takes a village to make sure that my message is clear.
I know, that's what I'm.
And a lot of,
trying-
and a lot of notes after the fact.
I know you're still in the 8 days, so that's why
Yeah.
we're now on
Yeah.
10. So
No, we're good. So we round up, 8 rounds up to 10. So we put in one more pupil personnel worker. Those are the people that work beyond the walls of the classroom and really assist families whose children are struggling to be academically engaged, specifically with attendance. The state has moved away from average daily attendance as a measurement that matters, and they only focus on the students who are chronically absent, and they define chronic absence as missing 10% of the entire days enrolled. So, and regardless of the reason. So oftentimes, if you have somebody who's medically fragile, or you have somebody who's going through some kind of challenge, social, emotional, in their lives, the pupil personnel worker is out there working with them and assisting with the family to get them engaged. And the last is safety assistance. We've had a great many conversations, very productive, where we've talked about the enhancements that we've done to our secondary schools to add additional technology and technicians to cover the technology and safety assistance, and partnered exceptionally proactively with the Sheriff's Department, so we have a school resource officer in every one of our secondary schools, and have been able to locate grant funds to make sure that every one of our elementary schools has an adopted police officer, sheriff's office person who's coordinating with them. But in the elementary schools, across our 18 elementary schools, we don't have any safety assistance. We have security vestibules, but they haven't been reinforced yet. They haven't. Our newest schools have buzz-in systems, but that hasn't been deployed across all of our schools. In this budget, we have 10 additional safety assistants that we would roll out to elementary schools as we finish their security vestibule, buzz-in, reinforced systems, so then at the other side of that security vestibule, you'd have a warm and greeting face of a safety assistant to make sure that everybody coming into the school is appropriate and has a purposeful reason for being there. And then the second is the staff are supported and accountable in meeting expectations for performance. This is we talked a little, this is kind of in the middle of Kerwin. How do we make sure that once we have somebody, if they haven't had the pre-service training that they needed before they came to us, how do we make sure that they receive the in-service training that they need to be successful in their job? Through professional development, through people coming in and actively working as mentors through them, through the infrastructure support, through technology to be able to do things as efficiently and effectively as possible. And then the last one is, who knows what's going to come out of this legislative session? We're already 300 bills and counting. They did 3,000 last year. Every single one of them that had an impact in the public school setting, there's things that we have to be ready for. So as new mandates come, we need to make sure that we have people to address them, because our people can't do anything more. So if you want something new, and you're not going to be putting a person in or money for it, then something old has to go. And right now, everything we're doing, I think, is really yielding great benefit. And the last one is, sustaining. How do we make sure that we continue to perform at the same level that we have for every single year, recognizing that without being planful about it, fatigue comes in. At the top of that is negotiations. As of right now, we have 2 units. We have ESMIC that covers all of our teachers and support staff, and we have SMASA. SMASA had a 4-year negotiated agreement that took them all the way through 2021. So they have a set agreement. It's a done deal. They've negotiated for and been approved for a step and a 1% COLA. Last year they got a step and a 1% COLA. EASMIC, we have completed the previous 4-year agreement, and we are currently negotiating for the next agreement. It's exceptionally important that we honor the process and that we recognize that the Kerwin initiatives at the core are predicated in how do we keep the very best people working with our kids, and how do we support the very best people working with our kids, and how do we make sure that those people have all the skills and support that they need. That's what this slide is. Sustainable association agreements. Because if you're going to come work for us, you need to know that we are committed to you, your salary, your professional development for the next several years. So we look forward to that. We're currently in that process, and as it concludes, that will be an integral part of our conversation in the spring. With that is also all of the additional benefits that our employees receive and how thoughtfully they go about it. What you'll see in this proposal is that we have, as a placeholder, put a 5% increase in healthcare costs. That is far below the county average for other groups, the state average, the national average, and that's not because we have decreased the care that's available for our employees. It's because we've been very planful, very thoughtful, and we've engaged the employees themselves in making the best choices for them. So that 5%, and we'll find out more specifically later this month, but that's where all that comes from. And then ultimately, we have to make sure that we continue to do all the things that we're doing. The graduation data has come back, and it's embargoed. So even though it's January and all the data was done a long time ago, it's still embargoed. So I can't tell you what that number is, but I can allude to the fact that it's pretty consistent with what we've been doing for the past several years. So we want to make sure that we keep doing all of the things that we're doing because it is yielding the performance that this county has come to expect from our school system. So a great look at a pie chart. It's kind of like a blue Pac-Man thing going on. 93% are people. The last 7% is all the other stuff. And so divvied across that, utilities, transportation, textbooks, PD, materials, technologies, supplies, maintenance, program, equipment, furniture, all of that stuff comes out of that remaining 7%. We are a people-driven enterprise. Where does our revenue come from? A little bit comes from the federal, a little bit comes from other revenues, about half comes from the state, the other half comes from the county. And we can't control what we receive from the federal government or the state. That's kind of formula driven, i.e. Kerwin. So we get what we get. And I can't come back and go, hey, but we really have a great idea this year and we really want to do this. The number is the number. The only thing that we can exert any influence over is our local funding. And so with that, the big picture. What will draw most attention is the fact that we're seeking a little over a $12 million increase, which is over a 5% increase over our 2020 budget. I don't want to bring a budget that's 5.6% over last year's budget. I'd like to bring a budget that's about 3.5%. If every single year we had actually received about a 3.5% increase, we'd be in good shape. But every single year you give less than what's requested by a substantial portion, you accumulate a deficit. And so, if this budget reflects an accumulated deficit of funding, you'll see that throughout, there's not some great, huge, big, splashy thing. A couple more special ed teachers, that's not a big, splashy thing. That's an absolute necessity. What we're asking for with a 5.6% increase is really in keeping with what we need to maintain the level of service we've been able to provide to this community and to our kids. The state number of $3.2 million is right now more or less an estimate. We won't have our actual state funding numbers until the latter part of this month, but we don't believe it's going to be substantially different than that. Kerwin, for all the conversations and for all of that, whenever that comes due, the amount of money that is being committed to Kerwin this year, that's going to be held off in a restricted fund. I don't think they're going to change necessarily the state funding formula for 21. I haven't heard any conversation about actually going in and modifying the state funding formula for 21 because they really, honestly, they can't. So that number is probably going to be the known number. Go up toward the top, $7.6 million of requested new recurring funding from the county commissioners. Our increased enrollment only obligates them to provide about $600,000 more than they did last year. So our budget at first blush is requesting a $7 million increase over maintenance of effort. Maintenance of effort, again, is, you say maintenance, I say that's flat funding. Maintenance of effort says whatever I gave you last year, I'm going to give you this year. So we're asking for $7 million more over maintenance of effort. We're also asking for $2 million worth of one-time money from their undesignated fund balance. At the same time, we are discussing within our CIP plans how we will spend every bit of our undesignated fund balance. We have about $94,000 in our undesignated fund balance. So within this budget, we will wipe out our undesignated fund balance and put it towards CIP projects. We're asking them to consider using some of that undesignated fund balance that the county's holding to give us money for one-time particular things. So with this, I'm then going to hand it off to Ms. McCourt to kind of walk you through the categorical disbursement of the requested 2020 budget.
So there are 13 categories as required by the Maryland State Department of Education that we allocate funds to. And the details of each of these categories we'll actually review on the subsequent slides. But as you can clearly see, the majority of the funding are going into technology and staffing. For example, the instructional salaries and wages category reflects an increase of $3 million. We're also supporting the contractual increases for the bus drivers. So you'll see about $1.5 million increase in student transportation. The $1.5 million increase that you see in operation of plant is substantially supporting the technology and infrastructure increases. And $3.6 million in fixed charges are directly related to those staffing benefit increases. Also incorporated in this operating budget are 32.6 new FTEs under the unrestricted budget and 12 and a half new FTEs under the restricted grant funded budgets. So for a total of 45.1 FTEs.
Before we move off the slide, if you don't mind going back, just so everyone's clear, the increase for contractual bus drivers, that is what is going to the bus contractors.
To the bus contractors.
Our SMCPS bus drivers are on the pay scales that have
That's
been
correct.
negotiated with EASMIC.
Yes.
Okay, just want to make that clear. There seems to be a
Thanks
lot
for
of
the
discussion out there about
clarification.
it. So, okay.
So diving into the individual categories, for the administration category, there is a $3.5 million budget there, representing a $15,675 increase, or a nominal 0.4% increase, and those monies will be going towards the negotiations that are currently in place. We do have a variety of EASMIC, ESP personnel within the administration category. For mid-level administration, the total amount is $17.6 million for FY21 being proposed, which represents an $812,000 increase, or 4.8%. Funding is allocated for negotiations, as well as 2 new registrars, one for Lexington Park Elementary School and one for Carver Elementary School. There is $236,000 allocated to the network security data integrity software, and this will be part of that $2 million one-time non-recurring fund balance request from the county government. as well as $17,000 for installation of technology and $63,000 for the server maintenance contract for IT. Instructional salaries and wages is one of our largest categories at $84.9 million, a requested increase of $3 million representing 3.7% increase. This includes funding for negotiations. It also includes funding for substitute pay increase. As you're well aware, there is an increase in the minimum wage this past January. So the recommendation is to include a 25-cent per hour increase, which averages out to 1.91%. At a overall budgetary cost of $55,000 increase. There's funding included for the evening high school in the amount of $131,000, after school programs and the associated salary cost of $127,000, equity EPED supplemental pay, the transition of one remaining Baby Talk paraeducator from the restricted fund to the unrestricted fund, an additional charter school teacher, and this will be in alignment with that additional 20 students that they presented earlier. An increase in the ABAPA art teacher of 0.1. That teacher is currently at a 0.9, so that'll bring it to a full FTE. And an increase of a PE teacher of 0.5. We also have incorporated 2 new teachers and 2 new paraeducators under the Kerwin funds, in particular for the early childhood and pre-K. Under textbooks and instructional supplies, the total budget is $4.3 million with a requested increase of $566,000 or a 15% increase. There is, this budget includes a continuation of school-based technology refresh, network core receivers at a dollar amount of $200,000 and firewall replacement of $240,000. There's an offsetting differential within this budget because there was a one-time allocation in the current budget of $800,000 for social studies textbooks. All of these funds will be a component of the fund balance request as well. Under the other instructional costs, we're requesting $1.6 million or a requested increase of $45,000, a 2.8% increase. Supporting the after-school program again via the contracted temp services. The increased enrollment that we've recognized through CSM dual enrollment requires an increase of $7,000. Athletic trainers, we're requesting an increase in hours at each of the high schools at a cost of $25,000. There are currently 750 hours allocated to each of the high schools. This will increase the number of hours to 1,041 hours. And an increase in the facility rental costs for swimming. Under special education, there's a requested budget of $20.1 million or a requested increase of $776,000 or 4%. This includes funding for negotiations, the 5 new special education teachers and paraeducators that Dr. Smith mentioned earlier. Additionally, a new special education social worker, behavioral and mental health professional, as well as a new secretary. And all of this is attributed to the increased student caseload volume as well as providing that additional support in the classrooms. We've also included 2 new special education teachers and 2 new paraeducators to be supported via the Kerwin funds. Under student personnel services, there's a budget request of $1.4 million, an increase of $169,000 or 13.4%. And this includes funding for the negotiations as well as new pupil personnel worker as well as a records mentor floating secretary. If you recall, in the current fiscal year, we put in place our first floating secretary to support fiscal services. That's been highly successful with the principals. This will do the same thing on the registrar side. And then we had to make a move for the mental health coordinator from the student health services per MSD's request. Under student health services, there is a budget request of $2.6 million, representing an increase of $137,000 or 5.5%, which includes funding for negotiations as well as 1 new registered nurse, This will address the increased needs of students due to acute and chronic diagnosis, as well as hoping to decrease our risk and liabilities in the schools.
Where would this nurse go? What school would they be placed at?
That has not yet been determined.
But we were specifically looking at the data, Benjamin Banneker Elementary School, no? Which, Evergreen Elementary School. Yeah. Ultimately, we take a look at we wait till the end of the year, look at all of the data, but we recognize no matter what, we need to have at least one more body in there.
Right, okay.
Student transportation budget is $18.9 million, representing a requested increase of $1.5 million, or 9.2% increase, which includes funding for negotiations, a new coordinator position, after-school transportation funding of $110,000, contracted bus route fee increases, and this includes operations fee increase for the bus contractors, maintenance fee increase for the bus contractors, as well as PVA increases. We've also included an hourly contracted driver attendant rate increase. The proposal is to go to a flat rate so that this allows for more of an independence for IRS consideration purposes, and that we would pay a flat rate of $20 per hour to the contractor for the routes, and $15 an hour for the bus attendants for the routes, plus their 25% markup that's in the existing contracts. We've incorporated 50,000 more miles for the mileage increase, which equates to about $16,000, as well as installation of Synovia on the remaining buses for $110,000. For operational plant, the total request is $18.4 million, or a requested increase of $1.5 million, representing a 9% increase, which includes funding for negotiations, 2 new information technology project coordinators, of which one would be offset by a decrease in information technology specialist position. A half computer support specialist would be funded from the unrestricted fund, with a half offset to be funded under the grants fund, because we've got an increase of grants and grant funded programs, so that position would assist in supporting those programs. The 10 new safety and security assistants, cyclical replacement vehicles, an increase in utilities planned of $434,000. The vendor managed inventory system that you received a presentation on, I believe, last month, represents an increase there of $22,000, and the security system software, hardware, and maintenance increase for safety and security of $122,000, and that's for the new security cameras and associated maintenance for the Raptor building access as well. Under the grant funds, we'll have the 0.5 computer support specialist, as well as 1 logistics support manager would be funded under our use of facilities funds. The maintenance of plant budget of $4.6 million represents an increase of $161,000, or 3.6%, and includes funding for negotiations, funding for contracted services for HVAC replacement, sewage pump for Green Holly Elementary School, interior and exterior painting at a variety of sites, as well as the Leonardton High School gym floor refurbishing in the amount of $46,000. The fixed charges category represents $55.1 million, a requested increase of $3.6 million, or 7.2% increase, which includes the typical things for Social Security associated with the negotiated increases, pension increase, the health insurance estimated at 5%. Those numbers should be released in late February, early March by Care First, as well as increases for MABE for our general liability and workers' compensation increase, and we've included $1 million for OPEB. This will be correlated with, if you recall from the revenue screen, $1 million use of SMCPS fund balance. Under capital outlay, there is a decrease in this category of $65,375, or 6.6%. We have included funding for negotiations as well as a fiscal specialist position. However, the decrease is recognized as a result of a net decrease in the building modifications budget. Are there any questions before I move on?
No questions.
So the upcoming dates, your budget work session will be scheduled for January 29th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Then on February 12th, we'll have your public hearing at 6 p.m. February 19th, an additional budget work session, and then on the 26th, it is planned to have the Board of Education approve your budget. Questions? So you have your typical binder with all of the supplemental details, and we'll be sure to have the directors at the next budget work session to answer any questions that you may have.
I appreciate just having a high-level look at it before we really delve into the specifics, more specifics.
And the other thing is, by the time we get together by January 29th, we are hopeful that we'll have more state information. We'll certainly, the governor's budget goes out today, which should then be followed by the attendant state release of what's our anticipated revenue to be expected from them. So we'll bring to the work session the most up-to-date information that we have on both known funding as well as anything moving forward with legislation. Well, that was fast.
All right, let's see. Does anyone have anything else at all?
No.
All right, our next meeting will be on January 29th at 6. We'll have the work session, what did we agree to? I think from 1 to 3 ahead of time, just so everyone knows. And we are adjourned.
So can we have a 5-minute break before we go into the work session?
Oh, yes, we can.
Thank you.
My usual question, this time of year, are you gonna post that on, Board Docs right away, I hope?